Math Lessons for a Living Education is a skill-based series. It's really important you take your placement test, right? Like, placement test helps you understand that you're in the correct level. And so know that it's a skill-based series with great approximations attached to it. Another thing that's important to note about Math Lessons for a Living Education is it's not a traditional program, and it's not designed to look and feel or be used like a Becca or BJU or Saxon Math. Those are methods that were designed for classrooms. They're traditional methods. I hope you're having a fantastic week so far. We have had beautiful weather in Arkansas until today. It's been like 70. It was 70 over the weekend.
Saturday hit 76.
76, man, that was pretty sweet. And now we're supposed to get snow tomorrow. So one of these, but that's all right. We're having a good week. Hey, let's talk Math Lessons for a Living Education. We're going to be doing a lot of throughout the spring. We're going to be talking about the different series, some of the things that are happening. We'll have more dialogue about math, but I just wanted to kind of touch base on some of the basics, if we can. Math Lessons for a Living Education. We acquired that in, I think, about 2015. Kristen and I had flown down we were living in West New York. We flown down, we were talking with Tim, and Kristen said, "Oh, look, Math Lessons for a Living Education is no longer being published by Queen Homeschool. Maybe we could pick it up as a line." And so while we were sitting there in the boardroom, I messaged Angela through Facebook and I said, "Hey, would you be interested in working with Master Books to bring your product to homeschool market through Master Books curriculum?" And Angela said, "No, not interested in working with you guys." And we had to put on our best charm to woo her over. We used every name in the book that we could to say we were, not bad name, but good name, that people we worked with, everything else. And Angela finally conceded and said, "Okay, let's see what we can do." And so that began the relationship with Angela and Math Lessons. So Math Lessons for a Living Education has been available. Angela's in the video. Angela, if you can tell us just how many years, when was Math Lessons for a Living Education first published? But then we took it over in I think 2015. So not really knowing what we had gotten ourselves into, we decided, hey, we need to launch all 5 books. They all need to be available immediately. And we rushed every resource we had to put together Math Lessons for Living Education. Now, the original versions, I think, were only black and white. We added a lot of enhancements to it in color. What did she say?
Level 1 came out early 2010.
2010. Okay, awesome. Woo, 10 years, Angela. It's a big deal. So we added a lot of things to it, and we put together this product and we put it out into the market. And then from that time, we've gotten a lot of good feedback, areas that we could improve, right? And the initial ones had some errors and typos. We've worked really hard and continue to work hard. We just went through an entire review process, again, of Math Lessons. We had math teacher, mathematicians looking at it. Angela did a full review of the program again, looking at all the feedback we've gotten over the past 5 years, and you know, going through each level and improving it. One of the debates we had early on with Angela, Math Lessons for a Living Education was an out-of-the-box Charlotte Mason influence program, but it was skill-based. And one of the discussions we had early on was Angela said, "I don't want to have numbers associated with the books, because as soon as you put a number in there, people will say that's grade 1, and then they become critical of it because it's really meant to be skill-based. And I, the marketing guy, said, we really need numbers. I think it'll be okay. And for the most part, it is. But we do say Math Lessons for a Living Education is a skill-based series, which means your student may be in first grade, but they may already develop the aptitude, the cognitive skills, the reasoning, the memory to be in math level 2. If that's the case, that's why we say it's really important you take your placement test, right? Like placement test helps you understand that you're in the correct level. And so know that it's a skill-based series with grade approximations attached to it. Now, if you look at a scope and sequence of a lot of standardized curriculums, whether it's Horizons, Becca, BJU, or teaching textbooks, any of these, you'll see that the scope and sequence of what is being taught follows along the same lines. Some people will say, well, Math Lessons for Living Education isn't as rigorous. True, it's not designed to be. So that's how we brought Math Lessons for a Living Education in. If there's anybody who has a comment, feel free to interrupt me, okay? By the way, I'm Randy. This is Brittany, my daughter and publicist here at New Leaf Publishing Group in Master Bucks. So she's fortunate because I usually grab her right before we come in. I'm like, hey, come in with me and do a live. So we bring the program in. We start laying it out and getting in place. We've taken a lot of great feedback. I mean, there are so many things that we've done, like perfs, right? If you were with us in the beginnings of Math Lessons for Living Education, we started producing these books, and some of the perfs weren't that good. Some of those things, we've done a lot to improve the perf process. So I think you're going to see the books that you purchase that are coming in and the new printings, you're going to love the new perfs. Anyways, so it's skill-based, and take the placement test. The placement test is a readiness test, which means if you're doing level 1 in the placement readiness test and it shows that the student is answering everything correctly, that means they're ready to do level 1, not they've mastered. It's not an achievement test, it's a readiness test. If they can answer all the questions correctly, and I think that there's some guidelines in the placement test. If they're able to do that, then we encourage you to go into that level. What we do not advise you to do is if you have a student who is, say, grade 3, and you really want them to be in level 3, so you try to rationalize them being there, they're going to miss some key elements in level 2 or level 1. So make sure you place them appropriately. Good.
In the app, just saying hi to a couple people. Arlenette, I think that's how you spell your name. Say good morning from Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Last week we had a lot of people from Australia.
We have Ireland. Ireland.
Hi from Ireland. I was wondering if you will offer math lessons or language lessons in spiral bound form. We can't bind that way in Ireland, so would love that.
Yeah, right now the binding is, we're using a lay flat binding. We won't be in a spiral binding. It is impressive when people do it. I think you can even purchase your own spiral binders and do it that way, but it's not something that we're going to be offering.
Steffi said, hi guys, I love Math Lessons for Living Education. It has helped us so much with math. After level 6, what would you suggest to move into next?
Oh, easy, principles of mathematics, and I'll cover that in a minute. So yeah, good. Another thing that's important to note about Math Lessons for Living Education is it's not a traditional program, and it's not designed to look and feel or be used like a Becca or BJU or Saxon Math. Those are methods that were designed for classrooms. They're traditional methods. This program is based more on a Charlotte Mason mindset. It has the influences of a Charlotte Mason mindset. Charlotte Mason purists are going to say Math Lessons for Living Education is not what Charlotte wanted. It's the concepts behind Charlotte Mason's methods, short lessons, developing application-based, like having a story where you see math in use and the context of the math being used so that you can develop the critical thinking, more holistic in nature. Learning the topic, then mastering the topic there, being able to verbally communicate and narrate back to you what the student is doing. Why? Because it takes a lot of skill to be able to narrate a skill, not just be able to go through the rote memorization and writing it down. A lot of these things. So then when we have somebody say, well, it's not as, whatever compared to curriculum A, you can hardly compare it that way because you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing an apple to an orange. And you really have to understand, the walls are coming down. You really have to understand the basics of the curriculum. And I think very helpful, some of the things that we continue to do, like the Math Teaching Companion that's now available, you can get it as a download or you can buy the physical copy. Highly recommend if you're using Math Lessons for Living Education that you use this. So understanding that it's a very holistic approach to math instruction based on Charlotte Mason approaches versus traditional math approaches that you're used to seeing in a classroom. So sometimes there's that, boy, this just doesn't feel familiar. I would encourage you to educate yourself a little bit on the Charlotte Mason method versus the traditional methods. Okay.
Over in the app, Alyssa Joy from Canada says, hey. Stephanie, hi, Randy and Brittany from South Africa.
Ooh,
over in
South
Facebook
Africa.
Live, Ariana said hello from Ecuador.
Wow, we got a lot of international.
Hi from Oregon City. I got a question for you. If you have a child who understands the concepts and can do all the skills in the level, yet they are dyslexic and have memory issues, so their short-term memory is a challenge, should you stop and work on mastering all the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division facts before moving on?
I'm sure there's a lot of opinions regarding this, and I'm no expert when it comes to special needs like dysgraphia and dyslexia. Personally, understanding the way the brain works, you develop the skills as you continue to use them. And so I don't know, as long as there's a way to continue building the skill development, I don't know that I would just stop and say, we're going to memorize this, because the memorization may be a challenge, but do they have a way to access the information and continue using it and continue building those skills? I know, again, math is one of the most difficult subjects because so many things are happening. You're dealing with memory skills, you're dealing with cognitive ability, you're dealing with visual spatial skills. You have all these very complex brain functions occurring, and where Math Lessons for Living Education is positioned, one first grader could be struggling with some of these skills, another one could be light years ahead, and sometimes a third grader could be struggling with these skills. And we get a little bit hung up on ability, if you will, when there's so much occurring. And so I think every child is unique, and you have to really test a little bit to see what works, what doesn't work. I don't think one size fits all. Sometimes you'll see in the group where we discourage somebody coming in and saying, well, your child has this, you need to do this, or there's only one reading program, or there's only one. That's because what works for my family may not work for your family. What works for my child may not work for your child. And so to come in and say, you need to do this because it worked for me, is wrong. It's a very subjective opinion. And I can tell you what my experience is so that you can draw on my experience and have something to test with your student. But we just don't like people telling other people what they should do with their students, because until you've actually evaluated the student, the teacher, the environment, all of these things, how can you possibly diagnose or give a solution? Right? So
Becca says, listening over here in Vermont, back in the app. Michelle said, hi from Arkansas, so pretty close to us.
There we go.
Woo pig suey. She said, how would you encourage a child to do school when the child has no real interest in any school type of work?
Yeah, sometimes we just have to do things we don't want to do. Some days we have to come to work and answer emails, and I don't really want to, but that's just expected. I want it to be fun. I want to make it as easy as possible. I want to give it application. So if I understand that I'm learning math because I'm building skills, not just math skills, but I'm also building my brain, logic and memory and critical thinking and all of these things that go along with math. And then there's just the times where it's, okay, we just have to suck it up and do it. It's just life. And so in that case, parenting wise, I'm not sure how everybody motivates their kids. We use a lot of rewards, like, to go to the youth ministry is a privilege. There are certain things that have to be done in order to participate in that. And come Wednesday night, when I look at, was your schoolwork done? Is your room clean? Have you met all of these requirements to have that privilege? That's a good motivation. And if you haven't, you miss out on that privilege until you're caught up. The other thing that I noticed too is when we get busy and we're not giving a lot of feedback, and having a large family with a lot of irons in the fire, that can happen. Sometimes I have to step back and say, I recently had a case with my student where he was expected to motivate himself for an extended period of time. And the Holy Spirit reminded me how much time I spent on detention when I had a supervisor standing over me and every day was required to get the work done. And I had to show a little bit of grace because I realized, I really wasn't giving him the motivation and encouragement and attention that he deserved from me. So hopefully that's a little help.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay, so I think something else that happens with math lessons is we need to ask what program you're coming from, because if you're coming from a traditional program, there's a transition into a Charlotte Mason type program. And hopefully in the future, we can talk about that, like how to make that transition, how to get the mindset of traditional achievement-based schooling to more of the application-based, real-world, bite-sized learning approach to become comfortable with that. Understanding though what the paradigm is that you're coming from helps to evaluate like where you're moving into. One of them, if you're using like a teaching textbooks or a program like Switched on Schoolhouse, which is computer-based, where there's very little teacher-parent involvement, sometimes it can be a little frustrating because when you come to math lessons, it really does require mom and dad being participants in the program. Now the lessons are short. You're not going to sit there for 3 hours having to fight through tears and anger and all of that. So it's not going to be that intense, but it is going to have more parental involvement. Another point, less is more except when it's not, right? So we reduce the Math Lessons for Living Education has, kind of the basics of what you need, and it doesn't do overkill, drill and kill, it doesn't pound in. But there are times that students need additional help. I think that, okay, I'm going to draw back from my elementary school experience many years ago. And I think about, I sat in a classroom with a teacher with a textbook that other students would seem to get. There were some concepts that I would come home at night, have to sit at the kitchen table for a couple of hours with my dad trying to explain different ways for me to understand the concepts. So Math Lessons for Living Education is a math curriculum. It's a tool. There are going to be concepts that students just don't get that they need extra help with. I wouldn't fault the program because of that. And I would look for, there's alternate ways to get more practice, right? Online, I mean, you can find addition practice sheets, 2-digit addition practice sheets, so many different resources like that to supplement. But, we've listened to a lot of the feedback from families who are like, we loved it except for when we hit, say, long division and we just needed more practice. So one of the projects that Angela's working on is called Practice Makes Perfect. Levels 1 and 2 will be available this year. It's in the spring catalog. And it's designed to just give you some extra practice sheets. So when you come across the concept that you want to do a little more practice, you're able to pull out a sheet and say, let's work on this. And give you even some ideas of if you needed some more practice. But also you could use that as reviews from previous levels. So maybe you put the student in level 2, but you think level 1 has some concepts that they could use a little more practice. You could buy the practice pack for the previous level and use that as a supplement to just reinforce and build the skills. So, we do less is more. We don't do pages and pages of repetition, and that's intentional, but we also believe that when you notice the student is struggling and needs a little extra assistance, you can add that. So anything?
Awesome. Hi, I don't know what the name is. Vanderloo said, hi, will Canadian shipping fee ever get any cheaper? We love Master Books, but can get almost all Master Books items in Ontario, and there's a huge homeschool market. Where did the comment go? Here, please open a Canadian warehouse like Answers in Genesis.
We have resellers in Canada. So Canadian Home Education Resource, Learning House. There's a couple of others that we have in Canada that do carry our products and will bring products in. Typically, our shipping prices include the cost of all the duties and everything that it takes to get in-house. But we really encourage using our Canadian resellers. And if there's a product that you need, I know I've worked with both Canadian Home Education and Learning House in Canada, and both of them have everything we have, they try to provide. In fact, there's some products like God's Design Science that they actually buy from us as a customer because we don't sell anywhere else, so that they can sell it into the Canadian market to help people. So that would be my biggest encouragement there.
Sarah said, hello from Kansas. Curious, my daughter is really struggling with multiplication so much that I purchased a second 4th grade manual to have a fresh start, but it doesn't seem to be working. Any advice? Do I have to move her on into the book and into division, or should we pause and keep working?
Yeah, I would say I would move on into division if you still have an issue with multiplication. The instruction, we also recommend Math Antics. It's a YouTube channel. It's not run by Master Books. It's not sponsored by Master Books, but he does a great job of explaining some extra concepts. And so that's an approved resource that we do allow to be posted in the Moms of Master Books, where we've kind of vetted it to make sure that everything is good. We use that as a family when we come across something where it seems like we're not able to explain it as well. The student is struggling. They didn't really pick up the concept with math lessons, perhaps the Math Antics. And I've learned a lot from that as well. So if anybody's watching that could grab that link or has a post to that link, that is something that I would recommend.
Laura Weersma said, good morning. I got so excited over the flash sale that I forgot about the live. I'll have to watch this from the start later. She ordered the math teaching companion this morning.
Awesome.
Amy Nye said, my K-son is in level 2. Level 1 I thought was more for 1st grade. Am I wrong?
Level 1 is, again, skill-based, and it would be the equivalent of level 1 type learning. And something that's real important in each level, the first, say, 10, I'm not sure how many weeks of lessons, but the beginning of every level is review. And so families will start doing math lessons for a living education, and they'll be like, oh, this is too easy for my son. But they're only in the review part. And you want to get past the first review into the meat of the course before you make that determination. So.
Right. Over in the app, Clark asked, I may have missed this, but when did you say the practice pads would be available?
They're being worked on right now. So I would say probably you're looking at March. March would be my guess. March, early April.
Awesome. And then we had some people asking about the teaching companion, but I think you're going to get into that a little bit.
Yep, I got one more. If you purchase Math Lessons for Living Education, there's a lot of great feedback in here. In other groups, and sometimes even in this group, there will be very subjective statements. Now, let me just say, sometimes people say, well, Masterbooks only allows rose-colored statements to go on in their group. That's not true. We enjoy the posts where we can learn from, we enjoy. And there's a difference between critical and constructive. And you know the difference. You can discern the difference. One of the problems, though, of a very generic post that says Math Lessons for Living Education isn't as good as BJU, is it's very subjective. It's based on the opinions of the user. And see, we don't always get to do due diligence on that statement. What I would love to do is say, okay, what programs are you coming from? Before you make a determination about a program, what program are you coming from? That helps me understand what your paradigm and what your expectations are. I'd like to know, how do you feel about math? Are you afraid of math, or are you very pro-math? Because the anxiety you bring as the teacher will go to your student. And so before you criticize any math curriculum, we have to look at the teacher. I fully believe you get what you teach, you get what you lead, and so I need to understand that. We don't often get that level. Did you do the placement test? So many times we have kind of somebody will throw out a very subjective statement about it, but then we find out that they didn't do the placement test. They just their kid was in grade 2, they know that they're a second grader. And so it said Math Lessons for Living Education Book 2, that's where they put their child. And then they get frustrated with the course. So that's another thing. Then what is the student's aptitude? I mean, when we're talking about first grade means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. What it means is students are all about the same age. But when it comes to abilities, mental ability, you can be all over the place with a first grader. And so what about the student's aptitude to learn, and where are we with that? And sometimes it's like reading. Reading is another one that, the difference of 6 months can make is huge. And so maybe sometimes we're the benefactor. Somebody buys a curriculum and then the student struggles, they move into like foundation phonics, and all of a sudden the student excels. Well, the brain has developed a lot in those 6 months. 6 months in a 6-year-old's life is a large amount of time when you look at the full scope of, what is it, 10% of their life is in that 6 months. Now, 6 months for me isn't, excuse me, 6 months for me isn't as critical, but 6 months for a 6-year-old is extremely critical. So I would advise you when you're evaluating Math Lessons for Living Education to kind of keep in mind that a lot of times the comparisons are apples to oranges. They can be very subjective, and without really being able to test the statement, it's very difficult to do that. And with everybody, man, we want you to do placement tests. Last year at this time, we encouraged, and I really would love it if you could, hashtag post-placement score, that you take California achievement scores or the Iowa test or some kind of achievement test. There's an online test. You don't have to give it to anybody else, but just for your own peace of mind, give your student the test. See how they do. It's good practice for them to do test taking, but we're not afraid of the test results, because last year, so many people were so pleasantly surprised that their students tested above grade level when taking like the California Achievement Test online. And so do that, please take that. Okay, so let's answer some of the questions that we have on it.
All right. Deanna asked, can you help me understand how to best use the math fact sheet in level 2? We had been using only the flashcards we had made from level 1 and up to this point in 2. Are we still supposed to continue counting items, memorizing something else? My 2 boys are up to the point of adding 2 digits to 2 digits without caring, but still struggle with their facts.
I think you just use those manipulatives as resources to help reinforce skills and to continue developing those skills. Once they show an aptitude for that, I think you can fade away from that. The sheets, what we've seen a lot of people do creatively with the sheets is they'll put it in like they'll laminate it, or they'll put it in a 3-ring binder, transparency so that the students can write on them and use it as a practice sheet to just get some extra skills. The way the brain works, the more you use the brain to apply the skill, the more that brain circuit is made. And so it's not necessarily drill and kill, but with math facts, you're actually trying to help cement those skills into the brain wiring.
Mallory asked, how is the new teaching companion best used? We are using Math Lessons for Living Education 2. Will there be extra worksheets that could be printable for use that I have for each level for extra practice? I have to go back and create my own problems to do more review with my daughter.
This is Math Lesson. The teaching companion is designed to help you understand what the program is trying to achieve. There's scope and sequences. There's some things that families who are in the program want to know, like the backstories of what happened with the kids, the twins in the story, maybe some of the recipes, some of the manipulatives. It's designed more as a complement to the course. The course has instruction. I think there's somebody that asked the question that's coming down further, why we don't have instruction in the lessons. Math Lesson, because it's skill-based, assumes that when it's doing a review of a concept, that skill has been mastered. So if you work through the series, you might even decide to save your Math Lessons for Living Education workbooks where the instruction is, just so that you have that. But it doesn't teach the same thing over and over again because it assumes you already learned this skill, you mastered that skill, now we're spiraling back around just to reinforce and teach that skill. In the teaching companion, it actually tells like what lesson, what skill was being taught, or was it a review? And so it's helpful as a scope and sequence, math 1 through 6. Let's see. Yeah, so like, probably hard to see, but it'll actually give you week 1 all the way to week 36 and all of the different math 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what they're learning in each of the lessons, or was it review, and that type of thing.
Melissa Rampy said, I've got 2 kids the same age. However, one of them needs to go back a level. How do you deal with the I'm not good enough attitude that will result from moving that child?
Well, we're all unique, and my strengths and my abilities that make me who I am are different than other people's. And I think we have to learn to kind of cope with that, right? It's tough because we kind of live in a society where everybody gets a trophy, but it's just not realistic. Everybody doesn't get a trophy. Everybody doesn't get to go on the president's trip and win the award. Some people have natural skills for certain things. When we don't, I think it's important that we learn how to develop the skills we need to survive. And so math is not my strength. My strength comes in the sales and the communication and breaking things down. But the fact that math doesn't come easy for me has made it so that I have to wrestle through concepts to make them understandable, which helps me in my job today. And I wouldn't be as effective in marketing if I wasn't as weak in math as I am. So I think helping kids understand that we are a collection of our strengths and our weaknesses. And even though sometimes we have to go back and work and fight a little bit, right? that doesn't change who we are as a person. I went into an ACE school in 8th grade from public school. My girlfriend, who I adored, went in 7th grade. Now she was Kristen. So if you know Kristen, she's quite a bit smarter than I am. So I went in ACE and I had to go back to 5th grade from 8th grade from public school and do what they called learning gaps. Kristen came in and she just like went up a grade. So it was a challenge because I was a year older then, and she was doing work that I should have been doing, and even above work that I should have been doing, and I was having to work my way through 5th and 6th grade. As tough as it was just what it is, and even today, I wish I had had a little more coaching in understanding how to celebrate others people's strengths. I was threatened by her success and her intellect, and so I would fight hard against that and want to set her back to match who I was because of my insecurities. And so I think sometimes with our kids, we have to be aware of the fact that let's celebrate other people's strengths and let's work real hard to get the skills we need to build on our weaknesses, but we also have strengths and we're going to celebrate those strengths. That was like an incredibly long answer to that.
Well, that was a good answer.
Thank you.
Good job. Sarah White asked, is memorizing using flashcards necessary for the higher levels? My son struggles with memorizing all the facts. We are halfway through level 2. He still finds using manipulatives or fingers helpful when adding and subtracting. He's a very tactile learner. When we do flashcards, he starts to get overwhelmed and upset. He does well with the math. It's just the memorizing of facts and flashcards that he struggles with. I stressed out about those a lot.
I think, again, your memorization skills come in many forms, right? Practice working on memory. Go for a ride and remember some things as you're driving down the road. Point out, a handful of things that you went through the trip. And then when you get to your destination, ask them, what things did we just see? Mm-hmm. And let them recall. Just little games that help develop memory skills. Math is hard because it's calling on all these things. And with a young student who doesn't have strong memory skills, math may always be a challenge. Like, I don't have good memory skills for math. I have good problem solving skills, but I don't have good recall. So the tools that we have really help, right? It's helpful that I have a calculator and I have Google and I have these things because that's just not a strength that I have. And so some students may not develop those strengths, but teach them how to use the tools that are available to them and continue building on those skills. I'm going to interject. Sometimes math lessons for living education, it's a very gradual, they'll call it a gentler approach. And I get a little, touchy. I don't want gentler to sound like easier, but it goes a little bit easier. And then by the time you're getting into grades 5, grade 6, it's required much more from a student than grades 1, 2, and 3. Well, I'm going to read something. This was in Psychology Today. And I'll just read a couple paragraphs of this. But I think, and Angela's working also on helping to develop kind of a thesis behind the math lessons and the logic. But early academic training somewhat increases children's immediate scores on specific tests that the training is aimed at. No surprise. But these initial gains wash out within 1 to 3 years, at least in some studies, are eventually reversed. Perhaps more tragic than the lack of long-term academic advantage of early academic instruction is evidence that some instruction can produce long-term harm, especially in the realms of social and emotional development. And this is why we are like, you'll see our stepping stones, Simply K, the Math K, even reading, we're like, don't push it, do it and start in 1st grade. So this is a study from Germany. In the 1970s, the German government sponsored a large-scale comparison in which graduates of 50 play-based kindergartens were compared over time with the graduates of 50 academic direct instruction-based kindergartens. Despite the initial gains of the direct instruction, the academic kindergartens, by grade 4, children from the direct instruction kindergartens performed significantly worse than those from the play-based kindergartens on every measure that was used. In particular, they were less advanced in reading and mathematics and less well-adjusted socially and emotionally. At the time of study, Germany was making a switch from traditional play-based kindergartens to academic ones. At least partially, as a result of the study, Germany reversed that trend and went back to play-based kindergarten. This is just one little paragraph. There are a lot of studies that show that pushing our students too fast. In fact, some studies are as bold as saying we're going to delay mathematics to like age 12, and we're just going to focus on problem solving and memorization and play, because in play you're developing critical skills. So sometimes when we see a criticism that's based on the logic of going a little slower at the beginning, we're like, yeah, but you're kind of hurting yourself when you push too heavy on the front end because of your own lack of understanding of brain development and lack of understanding behind the mechanics of the program. Okay.
Chase Melissa Rampy said, very good answer. Thank you. I think part of it is that the one that needs to move back is my nephew. The one that doesn't is my daughter. I'm afraid he's going to think I'm playing favorites. I'm probably trying to put out fires that haven't been lit yet. Thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah, sometimes life isn't fair, right? And as much as I want my kids to have an optimistic worldview, sometimes I have to help them understand the realities of life. And I can help them do that, but I have to be careful not to put my own insecurities and emotions, like deal with the facts and not my perceptions of the facts.
Right. Vicky and Melissa asked if they could get a simplified explanation of how to use the placement test. They're confused as to where to start their kids in the fall. The
placement test is you work through the problems. If they have an aptitude, I think there's a percentage in the placement test. It's a readiness test. So if they show that they can do the work at that level, that's the level they begin. If the next level, say they only get 50% of the problems correct, then they should start in the previous one.
Awesome. Allison said, my question is, my son is 11 and we are working in the level 5 book. Right now we are working on common denominators and adding and subtracting fractions. It seems even after repetition, my son lacks confidence in his math skills and wants reassurance from me every step. Any tips on how to make him a little more independent?
Yeah, just continue to practice and reward the behavior you want when he does it a little bit more independent and is doing a good job. But again, a lot is happening, and math is one of those. History I'm reading, and I'm gaining insights into, here's a story, it's interesting. Science is discovery. Math, though, is requiring me to bring so many brain functions to the table, and helping to just develop the skill. And yeah, I don't have a strong answer other than if he's showing forward progress, just continue to do that. And maybe there are times where you're just like, hey, I'm going to let you work on this problem on your own. I'm going to go do this and I'll be right back. And when he does it, wow, you did that all on your own. Really reward that behavior. Give him a good hit of dopamine to reward the behavior.
Right. And I think some of it's helping him to understand that mistakes are okay, because I had that problem too, where I want mom to, hey, good job, congratulations, you did it, but to know that mistakes are okay and I don't have to show you everything that I do.
Yes.
I don't know, that kind of helps me. Jessica McGregor, a little bit of encouragement. She said, excited for this talk. 4 of my 5 kids are homeschooling and use exclusively master books. After we tried several different curriculums over the 6 years I have homeschooled, master books is the best fit for us. This is our 3rd year using math lessons. The oldest is on level 5. I have used K through 5. We came from Singapore math and Abeka before that. Math lessons fit my idea more of a solid curriculum with no unnecessary busy work. I want them grasping math without consuming the entire day. Thanks, Master Books, for all you do.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica.
Bonnie said, I would appreciate having more guidance to determine when you need to stop and do more reviews so they get it, and when to keep moving because it just takes time.
Look at it. I would say, and Angela can weigh in on this as well, but I would say, when they narrate back to you, could they almost teach you how to do the program? Like, can they teach you how to do double-digit addition? Not just can they kind of recite it and pass it off, but if you said, I don't know how to add, can you show me? If they could do that, they have a full mastery of it. And maybe even playing that game of, okay, now you teach me how to do this, or you teach me this concept, and see how well they can do that back. And sometimes you just need to slow down and spend a little more time there.
Awesome. Over in the app, M. Vanderloo chimed in on Melissa Rampy's comment and said, God gives us all different strengths and specific gifts. My son has autism, ADHD, specific learning disability, dyslexia, dysgraphia, impaired memory, and struggles with many school subjects, but is gifted, almost a genius in math, building, and engineering. Maybe God's plan for him involved those strengths, so we worry less about the others. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Thanks for talking about that.
Amen.
Muna, I hope that's your name. She asks, why are there not explanations on concepts in many of the math lessons? I know that this has been a big concern for many in the homeschooling community.
Again, math lessons, skill-based, theater's instruction, but it makes the assumption that once you've learned a concept, now you're just practicing it. You don't need the instruction over again. So sometimes it's helpful, even if you just buy the previous level. And we're talking, $30 to buy the previous level. So if you're doing level 2 or level 3, to buy the previous level of 2 just to have some of the instruction that was available there. We see a lot of success with parents who are like, I want my kids to build their confidence. So we're going to go back and we're just going to have our kids do that. We're going to have them start writing, they're supposed to be in math 4, but I'm going to let them go to math 2, and we're going to accelerate through it, because really a 4th grader should be able to do math 2 in a quarter of the time. So they're just blowing through it. But then every now and then they come across something they needed the extra help and resource, but they're building confidence and they're building skills. And that's worked really well. If you're one of those families who said, you know what, let's just go back and let them build up some skills, and I wasn't really going to worry about the number on the page, just chime in. Let us know that was you.
Awesome. And Jenny said, I have a daughter who can do math in her head, often not the methods that are shown here. Any ideas how to guide her on this? That is, when do I say, no, you need to learn this way? And when do I let her do it her own way, learning in her head? Am I messing her up by trying to teach her a different way?
Angela can weigh in on that. I don't have a qualified answer for that. I have a son who just doesn't need to show his work. It just comes naturally and he writes it out. I don't know that we necessarily make him show the work, because his brain functions a little different in the way he can process it. So I think it's, I'd be curious to know Angela's take, and some of you who've been homeschooling quite a while that have gone through some of the math curriculums. How do you feel about that? Weigh in, please.
And then the last ones, Miss Betty Myers, she said, hello from Oklahoma City. This is our first year of homeschooling. We're looking to use master books next year. I look forward to being able to teach some of the subjects together with my kids. What subjects can we combine? They will be in 3rd and 6th grade next year.
Yeah, math, no. You can do science and history. Those are great to combine. So,
cool.
Awesome. Well, again, we've got, we'll be talking more about the math, and Angela has some really cool statistics and some kind of the science behind the math that we'll be sharing soon, and I'm excited about that. And again, we value the feedback that you have, and when it works, and we learn as much from when it works as when it's not working, what's resonating, how's it working with families. And any questions, or feel free to post here, and we'll be happy to answer that as well. And hopefully this was a blessing today to your math lessons for a living education journey.